Hi guys, welcome to this code film. So in this code film, what we want to do is that we want to actually move our application that we have on our local host to our virtual machine. So this is our application that we've done writing, and we want to move it to the virtual machine or the VM. And to really appreciate the approach that we'll be using, just take a picture or a snapshot whereby we are here. We're done with our deployment, then we're done with our service, and we want to deploy it. The VM could be in this building, it could be in this building, it could be anywhere in a different region. So how are we going to be able to get that file which is located in this building? We are not going to put it on a pen drive and walk all the way down here and do the deployment. That's where every changes we have to come and do it that way. But we're going to leverage on a web user interface that's provided by the app server or the Tomcat server or the web application server that we are using, which makes it easier for us to do deployment over the internet or on a domain base. So that's one way we are going to do that, and it's much more convenient and it's much more user friendly. If you don't want to go with this approach and probably think you want to go with other approaches, some approaches that you can actually use is to use a command or to do a file transfer to the server. And the file transfer approach is mostly based on the SSH protocol, whereby you do a remote access into the server, and then you add the remote IP address. Once you enter, you're actually going to be in the box. Once you're in that box, you're in that system. But how do you get your file to that system? You can actually use SCP. So SCP also has an underlying layer with SSH. So with that one, so you go ahead, do the same the same format as the SSH. But this time around, you're going to add the command of the directory you want to access. And once you do that, it specifies where you want to copy your file from. So you have to actually specify the file that you want to send. Maybe you want to send something like example.txt. Once you hit enter, this is actually going to try and move the file that we have here to this directory. So it's also based on, as I say, SSH. So it's more of remote access. So the keyword is more using a remote access approach. If you are not okay with this, which is a little bit stressful, it's not user friendly, it's not convenient, because for every deployment you actually have to come and hit a command. For every deployment you actually come and hit a command. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So if you don't want to go with this approach, the other approach there too is using FileZilla, which is a file transfer protocol. FileZilla will give you a client which will help you to access another PC's directory structure to send files. So you specify the host, and we stress so much on the host. The host is the IP, the host is the domain name, the host is the service or the application you want to route, the server you want to route to. That's the host. The server you want to go to, and the server, the identity of that server is the IP address. If it's mapped to a domain name, it's the domain name, and the username is the user that has been created on that server, and the password is the password that gives you that access or authenticates you to that, or authenticate you to that that server. And then the port for FTP is 21, and for SFTP is 22. So if it's a secure file transfer, you use 22. If it's not a secure file transfer, you use 21. So this is your local site, which is your my directory here, my local host. And once you are inside the box with the SSH that has been established, you actually see your remote site over here. So it says not connected to any server. So this is another approach, and it's all based on remote access, SSH. That's why I'm stressing so much on that one. And then that's the approach, another approach of doing that. But we are not going to go with any of these approaches. What we want to do is that we want to have a UI that shows up here, and then we just go to the web address. Simple. And with that address, we specify what we want to do. So we go to the web application deployment sites. If it has a port, you specify the port. If it has an index file, you specify the landing page. Then we are gone. Then once we hit enter, we are good. But you know, the web application deployment site we have maybe sitting on the server, so you have to specify the server's IP. So you rather get into that, so you just do the server IP address. So this is what we basically want to do, and it's more convenient. You just, when you're just done with your work on your local host, just come to this on the client of your local host. That's a browser. Then you just open it. Then you go ahead and you do your deployment. So that's what we are going to do. We are going to enable it for the virtual machine. For my personal machine or my local host, it's already enabled. So if I want to see that for this Tomcat server, it's actually located at HTTP. That's the protocol we are going to use. Then we're going to go to localhost 8080. That's the port that the application is running on. And hit manager. Hit enter. It says enter the username and password. Then we have this landing page. So this is the Tomcat web application manager. So once I'm done with my development, I just come what file to deploy. I choose the file. When I choose the file, I deploy, and I'm gone. I click deploy, then I'm done. As simple as that. That's what we want to do for the VM. So it's enabled on localhost, but it's not enabled on the VM. So let's go ahead and do that for the VM. Alright, so the VM approach, because we want to do it where we are not located, there is some aspect of networking that has to come inside, and internet, because I can't talk to a service without having internet when I'm not in the same parameter or when no network has been established. So we need to look at the networking bit of it before we can actually do that. Typically as a developer, you don't know all this, or you don't see all this. It's already done for you. You've just been hired, or I've just been hired. Do give me the solution. Then probably if there's a DevOps team, they go ahead and even do the deployment, or you just give them the solution. What's important is that you just at least understanding and appreciating enterprise infrastructure, so that it just makes you more well informed or well rounded. So let's go ahead and do that for our VM. So we'll go to our VM box, and there's the app server. The app server is the dedicated server that is going to only give users the right to deploy services or applications. So it's an app server. It's not a server for just one application, no, but it's a cluster of applications on one server. So if you want to keep extending it, we are going to extend the app server. So if this app server is just for Ghana, we can have an app server for Nigeria, we can have an app server for Guinea, we can have an app server for London, we can have an app server for America. We can even go ahead and have app servers for branches. A whole lot can come inside, but that's not my work as a developer. It's just for you to be well informed. So let's go ahead and actually start this VM. So start. So just gradually we'll get there, and then we'll do our deployment. And once that one is done, that'll be the end for this code film. So, and we have more interesting code films coming in, a lot of enterprise stuff, so that you'll be well rounded and you don't let someone come and just taunt at you as if you don't know anything. It's very simple. We don't use a pen drive to do deployment. I finished writing my code in Ghana. Should I walk all the way to Canada and do deployment, or should I put it on an email and send it to the people there to do deployment? Why don't you give yourself? Why don't we enable something so all developers can do that? Just imagine if we are deploying over email and there's a queue for every deployment that we do over the mail. It has to be received and it has to be deployed. Well, you can build a system around that, but this is not what we want to do. We want to have a simple approach. So yeah, so just by the way, so we want our VM to be up. Once our VM is up, then we go ahead and get our hands dirty. Alright, so it says app server login. So it's asking us for our username, and it has given us a terminal of TTY1. That's our terminal for us. If another user comes in, we can open multiple terminals. We'll have a section for Unix. We tackled every topic strategically, so that you absorb as much as you can. Right, so let's see what's happening. So let's go ahead and enter the username and then the password. Okay, it seems you have been logged in incorrect. Alright, so we're inside our box now. So who am I? I am app user. Alright, so let's go straight and enable the manager application, the Tomcat web app manager application for deployment. So I'll just go straight and do a cd to the opt directory or optional directory, and I'll go to web apps. So let's land here first. When we land here, let's ls. Alright, so we want to cd to web apps, and we get permission denied, and that's because when we check on the line that we see web apps, you realize that Tomcat users and users that belong to the Tomcat group have all the permissions, but a user that is in the other group doesn't have the permission. So we want to change that. So we're going to change that with sudo, and we're going to say for any other users, let's just give it right in, right read and write permission temporarily, and then we're going to specify for web apps. Alright, so it seems it has been applied. Okay, so it's highlighted green, which means that it has been applied. So we are good to go. So we'll go to the web apps folder and we'll go to manager. Let's list it first, step by step. Then we see manager, then we cd to manager. And we are going to do the changes that we need to do. Okay, let's swing back to localhost for a while. When you swing back to localhost, you realize that let's do this. Let's swing to localhost for a while. So in localhost, you realize that the web apps, we have a manager, and then the manager allows us to do that deployment, and it tells us that it gives us, when we go to the browser, we gave it the IP and then went ahead to do the deployment. So because this time around, and not even that case, because it's a web application manager, we can actually see what we want to see to it. What we want to see to it, and in terms of the incoming requests coming to the application, as to the IPs that are allowed or are not allowed. Someone say, I don't really get what you are trying to say and what's all this. So you just follow, and I'll explain later. So we're going to do the changes in the file. So first things first is that we want to enable the web app GUI, or the web app frontend, or the web app client. So we want to make it enabled, but before that, let's look at something. Let's look at this. Let's try and access the web app folder, the web app frontend or landing page with a curl request, because over here we don't even have a GUI. It's typically the command line. So first thing first, I'll do a curl, then I'll specify HTTP, and it's local because I'm on localhost, I'm on the VM now, and I'll specify manager. Let's go ahead and do this. Alright, so we get connection refused, and it seems we can't speak to the application because either the service is not up or the port is being blocked. So let's check if the service is up. When I say the service is up, let's check if Tomcat is even up on this service, on this app, on this VM. So we use sudo systemctl status of Tomcat. So it says it's inactive, so let's start Tomcat again. Let's restart the service. But it's in connection refused though. So now let's check the status again. It says active. Alright, so now let's try again and do our curl request. And that's fantastic. We get 302, which is okay. The 302 is more of a redirection, and it's because when you're on the client, when you're on the let's go back to localhost. When you're on localhost and you actually try to trigger this, I don't know if you really took notes, but when we try, it gives us a pop-up first. It tries to give us a pop-up, and that pop-up or alert, and it's that alert that we go ahead and navigate to, and that's because I have two instances, and there's a session related to web browsers and to web application servers. So let's go ahead and even give it I want to have something new, a new window. Let's have a new window. Let's try again. Good. So this is a redirection we are getting. So sign in, then admin. Once we bypass this, then we are good to go. So that's the same thing we are seeing. Even if we do it with a curl request on localhost, you still get the same issue. And that's because of the redirection. So we are trying to come inside the box, but it's redirecting you to, it's telling you that either the resource has temporarily been removed, or you can't come without fulfilling that prompt. So it's giving that redirection. So once you fulfill it, it goes inside. So this is what we are seeing in our VM, which is okay. So how do we, which is a good catch, so which means that our service is now up, so we don't have that issue with connection refused. So we don't see connection refused here again, so we are perfect now. Now we realize that we want this URL here to be understood by our client, or to be understood by my local host. So if I go ahead and look for the IP address of this, it gives me 10.0.2.15, which is more of a private IP. So if I pick this IP address, and I come now on my device and I try to route to the web manager application, in my routing processes, I'll have an error because the IP address I'm seeing here is a private IP. It's not going to allow me to go into the application with a private IP. Now this is what I'm trying to do. So you see, it's spinning itself. If you want something more elaborate, always go with the curl, because curl will throw more information or give you more logs or give you a verbose response. Let's do that with a curl and paste it. So you say it's trying to connect to 10.0.2.15, and you know that's, we have a network ID and a host ID. We look at all that in our IP address video. So we are trying to go into this private IP address and it's not working, and it's still hanging. So this is where the networking bit comes inside. You have to be able to get, so this is connection timed out, could not connect to the server. So we want to be able to expose the application that we have on our VM to the internet. So how are we going to expose it? So this is whereby we want to now go into VM networking. First of all, the IP address is private, so we need a public IP which we're going to speak to, and once we have that public IP, we can actually go ahead and do our deployment. So let's go ahead and get that done. Don't worry about public IP and private IPs. Later on I'll have a code from just on IP addresses. So what we do is that we go to the VM. So now our VM, we come to our host, and then we're going to go to settings, come to network, and then you see that the network here we have is NAT, and NAT is a network configuration that's being tied to the host. And what it's just saying is that in a NAT network, there's a router that you are coming through. So your client or your host, which is going into the VM, has to pass through a router. So you have to speak to the router. Then the router will give you, if there's some networking aspect of it which, if it has been done or it hasn't been done, that's nothing, or giving you it's called nothing, whereby you translate the private IP to a public IP. There are ways of doing that. If it has been done, then you can go ahead, but if it hasn't been done, I can't access the VM via the internet. So it's a different field, but I won't go so much into it. So that's not what we want to do. We want to just go with the bridge network, bridge adapter. And there's a summary for this. With the bridge adapter, it's a switch. So all the services that are connected to that VM, the devices that are connected to that VM or to the host, they are all acting as a switch. So we are all like in the same physical parameter, but we are virtual. So if we are sharing internet, we all have internet. If we are sharing files, we can access everybody's VMs, but because we are all in a switch network. So that's what we want to use, and the other configurations. But for this purpose, we use bridge adapter. There are some security concerns attached to all this, but this is not the cause for it. So we just click OK. So we've saved the settings. Then let's go back to our VM and check our IP. Our IP now has to be in the ranges of 192 IPA. Okay, so let's restart the machine. Let's restart our VM. Let me just restart the VM. We'll come back to it. So we'll go with the bridge. So let me just walk you through the networking, VM networking summary. There's actually a nice documentation online that you can actually check to understand more of the VM networking approach, and it's something that if you take your time to look through it, you actually appreciate the VM networking. So take the bookmark. Let me see all my bookmarks. Can't I search? No, I just saw it down there. Yeah, so this is VirtualBox networking. So this helps you to understand the various networking that we have. NAT, which is a router. So every VM has a router, which is NAT network. All VMs attached to one router. And we have a bridge adapter. All VMs attached to, and the host attached to a switch. And then we have the internal network. We specify the network with a switch, and we decide which VMs will join that network. And then we also have the host only adapter, whereby every VM has their own network interfacing card, not a router, not a switch, network interfacing card. So there's no way that we have internet connection, and then we specify and then we connect them. If this is just a pictorial view, I'll drop this in the description section. And we also have this image I got online, which you can also check. I'll share the link to that resource also, and that one to gives you a summary of everything that we are trying to relay in regards to the networking to a host. The name of the file, network. Yeah, networking VMs. So this is a summary. NAT network, bridge network, internal and host only. As we explained, host only is only a NIC, so you don't have internet access. But bridge, you saw that it's a switch tied to the host. NAT network, you saw that it's a router tied to the host, so you have internet, and it goes on and on. So this is just what we are going to use, bridge network, because it gives us everything, because we want to expose our VMs manager and web application and deployment service online, so we can access it from our host. Alright, so this is what we are using, bridge network. It gives us internet access to other VMs, access to the host, and access to other physical machines. So we are going with this approach. Alright, we've restarted our VM. Let's open our VM now, and let's just get started. Alright, so this explains why we want to use an IP address that is public. So once we specify that public IP address, we also now make our web application expect requests from that IP addresses, so that any IP address that is coming with 192 or that's coming 192 or any IP that we've set up is going to be understood by the application. So the application actually is listening to filter out IP addresses that it doesn't understand, and also to allow those that it understands. And it's a security feature we've just put into our application. So this application security. So you realize that there are some geographic regions whereby if you are trying to access some resources, it tells you that you can't access these resources from here because of the IP that the router is coming to its gateway, and it's able to siphon it or filter it out. Yeah, so it's a security feature. Yeah, so, and it may not only be that. Just imagine if you build a payment gateway and then a developer becomes sloppy, he leaves your organization, and now he has access to the software or the APIs. He has access to those APIs, and then you don't put out this filtering system out whereby you filter out IP addresses that are not within your premises. Something can go wrong. So it's just even internally to your own services, you can also filter out IP addresses that are not allowed, or they cannot inbound to your application or to your services. So it's a security feature, and it's good to have it there. It's good to know. Yeah, so that's just by the way. Alright, so let's see when this is up, then we go ahead and do our work. Right, so I'll be back in a second. Alright, so our VM is ready. So we applied the bridge adapter to it and then we restarted it and it's ready. So we're just going to go inside the VM and check if we can get our public IP. So we have the one showing 192.168.0 and that's the IP version 4. So that's the public IP that we're going to use to be able to access our manager application. So with this done, now let's go back to our local host and look at this beauty. If you are still struggling to know why we are actually doing all this, so let's do CMD. And what we want to do is that we want to be able to create the manager app that we are running on a VM from our host device. We can easily do that when we are on our own PC, but when we go to the VM, we can't just do that because we explained earlier with regards to networking, and as earlier in the video, networking and other reasons. It's mostly networking and then filtering that comes inside. So we want to try and do this on the VM, on our VM. So we are getting connection with the service is up. I don't think the service is up. That's my Tomcat server. It's going to sleep. Yeah, so I'll actually start the service with Tomcat and then monitor. Let's start the service. Once it's up, we should go see it will work. So the test we want to do is that let's do a curl to IBK and say HTTP. Then you now know the service IP address, so 192.168.0.162, and it's all in the same network because it all comes from the router that I'm using. So they all have the same network ID, but they are different hosts. So this is 162, but we are going to we have the VM's IP being 190. So we are going to curl to 190, or even let's try ping to 190 first. So you see if we can reach 190.168.0.190. That's the host. So it's successful, which means that we can ping. So if there's a server on that VM, we can actually make a request to get the endpoint. So we are going to do HTTP Let's try 192.168.0.190 and do .80 and do manager. This is just similar to what we did on the local host. So let's see one look at. So it says failed to restart, connection refused, could not connect to server. So let's check if the server is up before. So we'll do that by doing sudo system ctl status. So because we restarted the server, we're going to speak. I tried to make it a background service. I don't know why sometimes it complains of environments in the service files. So you have to check that. So let's just start it manually, because I'm not supposed to be actually starting it. Once you restart your PC, it should just work. So I think there's an error with the service file. Let's have a look at it. So let's go ahead and check the status again. So it's up now. Now let's do a curl request manager. Voila, it's good. So we're at our source IP, which is a host ID of 162. But we are trying to reach a host on 190, and it's going through successfully, but it's telling us that we are getting 302, and we've actually seen this 302 on our private device or our private environment. We stress that it's all due to a redirect that happens. So that's a good news for us. So it's a valid test. So what we want to do now is that we want to access this from the browser and see what we get. So let's have a Chrome instance. Let's have a Chrome instance. But in the real world, you realize that it's already been done for you. So all this that I'm doing is just for you to appreciate enterprise infrastructure and the work that goes into getting some of these things done. 0.190.atm manager. Okay. Alright, so we're inside the VM now. So we have to give it a username and password. So let's just enter and see. So it's not allowing us, which means that it's not a valid username and password. We have to find the username and password for this particular manager. In other words, which users does it allow to authenticate into this service, and do they have the necessary rights and privileges to do whatever they have. So we are going to do that in the VM. So we will go straight to the VM and let's go straight to the VM. We'll go to Tomcat, and we will actually find this one in the configuration folder, the conf folder. So let's go to the conf folder. So we have permission denied because we did explain that we made everything belong to the Tomcat user. So we are going to actually going to do a simple chmod here and change some of the permissions so we can actually do what we want to do. So we'll make other users have with the right permissions, and then we're going to apply them to the conf. And then we'll do a list which it has been templated with. We move to the conf folder and we search for the context.xml file. So we'll do a vi into the context.xml file. Then we're going to enable those users. Right, so context.xml file. Okay, this will be loaded for each web application. Sorry. Let's better do it. This for this is okay. We're actually looking for users, so I'm supposed to look for users file. Sorry, users, Tomcat users. The context.xml file here is different. That's for the web server. This one I'm going to do it for the Tomcat users. For the Tomcat users. So let's do it for the users rather. So vi Tomcat users. Alright, then let's allow them. So we have the users here, so you can just comment them out, and it says that if you need to configure one or use, so that's what I just go. Alright, we just change the username. User and observer. Okay, so we are good now, and that's for the manager. So we are fine now. So let's go back and test again. So let's try again. So you said app user, and then let's check the observer. Right, so let's do observer. That's fantastic. So we are inside our inside the web VMs manager app. So we just go ahead and go and do our deployment. So this is very straightforward, and we are doing all this on the URL, on this URL that has been given to us. So that's the uniform resource locator. We've been able to locate it on the web or on our intranet, and we are going ahead to do our deployment. So next thing is that let's just choose the file that we want to deploy, and then we already have the file on our Tomcat server, so you can actually deploy from that side. If not to, you can actually deploy from the project itself. So it's all up to us. So to make it a little bit realistic, let's go and do it from our Tomcat server. So not only the Tomcat server, let's also do it from our project. The project is much more better. So we see that we are not doing any other shady work anywhere. So we go here. Close workspace. X is the app. Target. So application.war. We found the file. Then we deploy it. So we just click deploy. So this is very simple. So this is the VM, but I'm accessing it from my browser, and this is my host. Alright, so let's see what it says now. Okay, so it seems it has been deployed. We have it here, and then it's saying running, which is true. Okay, so in other words, it has been successfully been deployed. So let's hit the endpoint. That's fantastic. So our app is live. So we're actually reaching the application all the way in the VM, and we are doing it on this URL. So let's go ahead and have our endpoint. So here I'm open my Postman, and when I'm done with my Postman, I'll go straight to the endpoint that gives us that ping, or to see if whether application is up or not. Isn't this just wonderful? We didn't use a file transfer, we didn't use any other means, we are just going straight to the web GUI. So even if the server is in Dubai, is in China, we can still go ahead and do deployment. Okay, so let's go to VM demo. So API.greetings. Was that the only directory there? Right, so let's change this IP address. So we just say 190. Let's hit the request. Oh, fantastic. And it tells us that API call was successfully performed, and it says success, welcome in, and this is coming from our server. This is the application running on the server. Someone say, well, I don't believe. Let's just do this now. Let's go back to our source code, and let's just make a change. Let me just do a quick change. Let me go to the Eclipse. I just want to add a line of code. let's just wait for my to show up. Then I'll do it here. So what I want to do is I just want to add one line of code. So I'll just do system.get the operating system name, and then we just add it into our status or a meta that is actually running from this VM, just so you know that it's actually from the VM. Yeah, so that's what I want to do now. I'm trying to put it just as a source file, but it seems taking a while for me to actually locate where the directory is. So let's just wait, then run that line. And when that one is done, we'll do another deployment, then we are good to go. So I'll be back when the ID is up again. So alright guys, so we are going to just add some line of code just to be able to be sure that we're actually making call from the VM and it's not coming from our local host or our personal device. So what we want to do is that we'll change the response a bit, the message. So what we'll do is that we will say a different message if the deployment was successful on that VM. So because of this, what we want to give a different message if the deployment was successful on the VM. We're actually doing this in greetings endpoint. So we come into API application.api.greetings. So we want to greet you differently. So we have a so if there's a successful, we'll say the string.message will be equal to, let's have a message, and we say that API or application was successfully deployed in the VM. This is the message we want to give to our user, but we do that based on the condition. So if the system get property, let's just put property os.name contains Linux, then we're going to give this message. Else we will give a different message, or we can throw an exception that this is not the kind of this illegal deployment. So this is what we're going to do now. So this is what we are now trying to do, that if we can actually detect that it's a Linux machine, then fine, around the VM. But if it's not a Linux machine, we are not going to go ahead and do our deployment. So if it's a Linux machine, and we can actually go ahead and see a system.get environment variable is a Tomcat user. The user is a Tomcat user because when we are configuring it, we said it has to be a Tomcat user. Tomcat it contains Tomcat, or not even contains. Let's make it equals, ignore cases. Tomcat. Then fine, we're going to see that we're on the VM and we're actually running it as a Tomcat user. These are just security parameters. So a message was, and the message will say is application was successfully deployed on the VM. Or instead of just typing VM, you can go ahead and say on the Linux VM. If not successful, then we return a different message, or we try an exception. So we modify message here now and we put this here now. So we see message here and we give it a different scope and we change it here. So this is what we do. If we're successful, this is the message we'll see. So for now, let's just detect that it's a Linux machine. This is what we want to do. But if that's not the case, we can throw an exception. So we can actually just go ahead and say true, and we'll give it a name, and we'll call it illegal deployment exception. And we can create an exception for that. So this is what illegal deployment exception. So if it's not successful, this is what we'll throw. So we'll give them a message, and then we'll just say hello, welcome here, and that'll be. But if it's not the case, then we'll just throw an illegal. So we can actually go ahead and create this. We'll put it inside our. Let's just put it in our base package. Go ahead. Extend runtime exception. And let's go ahead and just generate our overrides. So constructor, sorry. Generate constructors super. So select all. So generate. Make it serializable. So we've now defined that. So if that's not the case, we will change our message. And the message now is that deployment was done on. What deployment was not done when the expected VM. Alright, so we can actually go further and make this a little bit more robust, but we just want to detect something. So we'll just go ahead and we'll craft this differently now. So we'll cut all this. We're going to do it like so. Root response type string. So go to root response. Initialize root response to this. Yep. Or you can do this now. So if we do that, so that's what we do, and we just put root response here. Okay, so we are making some changes. Alright, so yeah, we've made some changes now, and let's go ahead and build the exception class. Exception. We'll create an exception handler and we'll move on. So we're going to call this application exception. We'll go ahead and add that exception and name the name of the exception public. Return a root response. And then we'll give it legal deployment exception handler. And it's expecting illegal deployment exception of type 3. So if we're able to detect that, then let's craft our response point to as well. And we're going to call this one exception response is equal to, we'll copy this here. message string dot message will be equal to e.get message. Change this here. So actually we have done almost everything. And we change the status code to that of field, expectation field or precondition field. Yeah, so we've done our changes, and it's going to return. I don't put the wildcard because we know what it will return, but here is a string, so we're going to return the string. So we know that's going to be a string. Right, so it has to be a response entity, sorry. Response entity. Okay, so we are fine now. Yeah, okay. So it will no longer be success, but here is going to be orders. Can make it all the status code. Condition field. You can have the message and make this error. And make this which response. Maybe field. Yeah. That's in the value. Right, so we are fine now. Okay, so this is the new change that we just done. So let's go ahead and do our deployment. We are just trying to say if we don't deploy on the Linux, try an exception. If we deploy on the Linux, don't try an exception. If we deploy on the Linux, don't try an exception. If we don't deploy on the Linux, try an exception. So that's what we've just done over here with all this work that we are doing. Yeah. So let's build this. Compiling them doing. So we do two deployments, one on the Linux, one on the Windows, so we'll be sure what we are doing. Okay, so our file looks ready. Okay, so let's open our interfaces. So this is for the VM, and we duplicate this and route to that of the local host. So we'll do the local host deployment first. Okay. This is not found. Why? So I'll set this up. Our server is up. This is our folder there. Manager tools here. So why is it saying this? So let's actually take a new window. Let's go there. Manager tools is not available. Wow. What could be the issue? So let me stop this and restart it, because it's supposed to be there. Right, so let's go ahead and do the VM soon first. Let's stop this, run the VM, let's undeploy it, and we go ahead and deploy. So this is what we just did, and let me start that up there. The local host or the host device, it's up. Let's slash manager What has happened? Says resource manager is not available. Alright, so we'll actually do it manually. We have to actually go and put a file in the deployment folder. So we'll do that manually. So let me actually do that manually now. So I'll go and pick the file from here. Let me refresh this. Alright, so let's copy it. Let's paste it here. Alright, so then it has been deployed into the server. So if you go and come back, it's supposed to expand. So why it's not working in the console is what I'm trying to understand, which I don't understand it. 404. If I made a mistake with the URL. So we have 2 endpoints. So let's create another. Let's duplicate this one. And we're going to call this one for localhost. This will be the VM. Right, so let's pick the URL here and test for the VM first. We test for the localhost first, as we agreed. Let's just type localhost here. And let's send the request. Since deployment on my localhost is giving me issues. Alright, so let me check something. Console, let me see the console. Right, so let's kill this. We have another instance running. Sorry about that. So let's go back to here and check again. Alright, so that's good. Refuse to connect. So I think there's so many ports. So let's kill some ports. Let's do CMD. I'm just trying to get my manager up. That's what I'm trying to do. So it's not part of the code thing. Alright, so it looks good. Let's restart it. I want us to do it on the localhost first and move to the VM. So it seems our VM has already been done. The deployment is ready. So our deployment is ready for that VM. We've actually loaded the file. So just left for us to deploy. So let's just go ahead and deploy. Let's just go choose the file again. Sorry. Open and deploy. And now we wait for this one to go ahead and see what the issue is. Okay, so we are good now. Alright, so that's perfect. So we are fine. We are okay. So because we did a manual deployment, it's actually showing here. I had to copy the file manually, but if you could still go and choose file approach. So let's just send our request. This is for localhost. Let's send first. So that's good. It throws the exception precondition field. It says that deployment was not done on the expected VM. Error field. That's perfect. Now let's go to the VM. Let's send our request. Let's see. This one gives us 200. And we go ahead and check our response body. And here we see application successfully deployed on the VM. So that lets you know that we have done 2 successful deployments. One wasn't successful in the sense that it wasn't running from the VM, they are all successful because it's running from the VM. So that's it for this code film, which has to do with deployment and moving the file to the VM. So you saw the stress that was attached to the manual deployment, whereby you have to actually copy the file. And what if we had to actually to go with the FTP approach? So the FTP approach, we have to open FileZilla as a client. And once we open FileZilla, we have to hop to that server and do the deployment. And we explained this earlier in the video. So the other approach would have been to go to the IP. And you know the site is 190. The user is app user. And you know the password too. And you know the port is 21 or 22. So let's just do 22. Let's do a quick connection. So save password fine. So I'm trying to go to the VM. So it's doing an SSH. That's checking some certificates. Yeah. And it's now running the VM. And if we go to, we're actually in the home user, but our directories are the root user. So if we go to root user and we go to where we have our deployment, which is OPT or optional Tomcat, then we go ahead and do our deployment in our web apps, and then we put the file here. So the file is outside here. So this is another approach. For every changes, you have to come and actually trigger that move for that file that you want to deploy over there. And that's this approach if you want to go with the deployment structure, whereby you have to actually choose the file by yourself, and then there's also stress to attach to that one. So every change you do, you have to actually come, then you have to be sitting here and be listening here and be moving the file from here to here. That's if you want to go that approach. And the other approach we mentioned to go with the SCP, let me say app user at 192.168.0.90. You specify the path you want to go to, and go ahead and do your deployment. But you should have some file that you want to move. So this is just one way. So let me just create something here. Let's see if I have a simple file here. There's not anything. Let's just pick anything. Let's just go zip DDL. So let's copy again. Alright, so this one is now it's asking for your password before you can do the copy. So this is another approach. That means all the time you have to be moving the files this way. So that'll be for this code film. So in the preceding code film, we'll look at another way of automating deployment. This one is just about how to get the file into your server. Now we want to automate the whole deployment process, and we don't want to. All we want to do is write the code and forget about deployment. So we'll look at that in a code film. That will be about Jenkins or CI/CD, and that one makes life easier. So stay tuned and don't go anywhere. And this has been Code Films, and thank you for sticking around and enjoying the Code Films as it is. Don't worry, I stressed on something about Linux and Java. We're going to look into that. It's very interesting. Thank you, and then all the best. Bye.